So the first person I'll talk about today is A.J. Eichner. He lived from 1842 through 1936. He began preaching in 1862 at the age of 20. He attended the Rock River Seminary at Mount Morris, Illinois, so nearby, from 1863 to 1867. In 1868, he attended and preached at the Waterloo, Iowa Conference. He traveled extensively from 1870 through 1882, and in 1882, he moved to Iowa to pastor Gladbrook and Irving. In 1895, he was elected president of the Iowa State Conference. I actually have this journal here, but I have it in a Ziploc because it's pretty old and it's starting to fall apart. This was donated to our archives by a little grandma who was my stepfather now. We have quite a few works from him. This handwritten journal spanned the year of 1895 through 1896. He traveled throughout the state of Iowa, shipping their tent to the next meeting location and penning his adventures, trials, and highlights into this journal. So you can see what they stayed in as he traveled around. He spoke about many topics, including life eternal through Jesus, kingdom of God, what Jesus preached, the rewards, when and where they will be given, the don't care class, the what difference does it make anyhow, the bigoted sectarian, and many other topics, including the gospel, the kingdom, the covenants, the resurrection, the coming of Jesus, eternal life, the soul, the spirit, the inner man, the outer man, the old man, the new man, he was getting balance in there, the Christ, the hope, return of Israel and Judah, and what to do to be saved. So there's the topics we're still studying today. He did have his low points during this journey, and in addition to the highlights, but he did talk about this in one of his journal submissions. He said, "That day was a sad one to me. I came very near to being homesick. I thought it all over. Why is there so much wealth in the world, and yet not enough of it can be secured to help someone in the work? Why should I leave my home and family and be among strangers in a strange town and not even a companion to share in the toil and preaching? I had an organ in the tent, but no one to play to start the songs of the evening service. Would I send for Pauline to come and help me? No, I thought the brethren might say it was too expensive even to pay her railroad fare, as I saw crops failing day by day. No, I would do the best that I could alone and rely upon God for success. These and many other thoughts crowded to my mind, and trusting in the promise, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee, I went about my work in a systemic manner." And I like how he flipped it at the end, and he remembered, I have to rely on God. He did have some humorous times in his journal. He lost his pants. One night, and this is an account right out of his journal, that night thieves entered my tent and stole 2 pairs of my pants, and they nor the thieves were ever found. With all of our troubles, there is usually a pleasant and cheering thought. It was so in this case. I did not like the thought of losing 2 pairs of my best pants, yet I was extremely happy when I came to reflect that I had 1 more pair in my trunk, which had been locked when the thieves came to steal my other pants. Otherwise, I would have been placed in an awkward and embarrassing position when I got up that morning, especially if I had been alone. What could I have done? You see the wisdom and philosophy of sending out 2 with the tent, so that if one fall or loses his pants, the other may raise him up or be sent after a pair. I don't know if that's what they had in mind when they sent 2 people with the tents, but it worked out. During the course of the year, these are the locations noted in the journal in order, although some of the locations he went back to throughout the year. They included Marshalltown, Lorenz, Belle Plaine, Lanark, Marathon, Levy, Witten, Ferguson, Hickory Grove, Berwick, Spring Valley, Irving, Alden, Eagle Grove, Gladbrook, Garvin Street, Adel, and Perry. He noted through the year he worked for the conference 153 days, presented on 186 sermons, and worked in the tent 97 days. Eichner baptized 25 through this year. 5 more were baptized by G.M. Myers, and 6 additional at conference, making a total of 31 for the year. At one point of interest, we will mention that A.J. Eichner, and Scott mentioned this earlier as well, he penned the words to the hymn, Beautiful Days. As you can see, this one piece of history has a very rich and deep story to tell. Next is S.J. Lindsay. And I'm not going to go into too much depth with him. We gave a presentation on him 2 years ago just about S.J. Lindsay. And as I mentioned, he was my grandmother's grandfather, so she remembers sitting, talking to him when she was young and hanging out with him. He lived from 1866 through 1941. He was very involved in evangelism and preaching around the time the Church of God began to take root in the country, and his primary residences were Illinois and later on Arizona. I do have the quilt that his wife Nellie Lindsay made, and I did bring that with me. It's the first quilt that you see when you come in. It's almost 100 years old, and it was handmade, of course. You can see the mixed patterns used, which were no doubt scraps left over from other projects and clothing. At that time, everything was used to its fullest potential. This was made in the log cabin pattern of quilting, and according to the website Museum Link, Illinois, log cabin quilts were made of arrangements in a repeated single block pattern. The log cabin block consists of light and dark fabric strips that represent the walls of the log cabin, and the center patch, often red, and you can see in this image, represents the hearth of fire. So you can take a look at that. It's pretty fragile, and Mom and Jennifer Foster actually did a little bit of sewing on it earlier this summer, so it would fix the worst of the tears, but it's very fragile. We would be remiss by speaking about S.J. Lindsay without mentioning Restitution Heralds. And I don't have to say much about that because Russ covered that in depth. Right? He was the first editor of this publication and was so from 1911 through 1921. Our church has 49 of the 50 bound Restitution Heralds. The first 2, however, in very poor shape, and they would need to be replaced. They were bound using covers from a clothing catalog, and articles were cut out of those catalogs from the books for previous owners. That's how they bound the outside. We also have all of the loose heralds. It is interesting to note that some of the names who the heralds belonged to were Ivan McGaw, Leota Hansen and Paul Johnson, Sidney McGaw, and one of them includes a note from his son Sid to his father. It said, "To his best teacher for Christmas that year." According to Webster's dictionary, restitution means the restoration of something lost or stolen to its proper owner. And our full church name actually is the Restitution Church of God of the Abrahamic Faith. So that's a mouthful. The next person that I'm going to talk about is Henry Madison, and that was my great-grandfather. I actually do remember him a little bit. He was born in 1896 and lived to 1983. He was the late father of the late James Madison and Margaret Madison Budrow Foster. So there might be some photos of him on those boards over there. He was an architect in central Illinois, so he had a great eye for detail. He made scaled plans of the ark. There's one view, and then here's another view, and I didn't get really close on those, so if I zoom in, it gets fuzzy, but we do have those that I could probably stand a little bit better. We have this entire notebook. He did a whole study of the ark, specifically how it was made, what it could have been made from. Well, I mean, obviously we know it was made from the Bible, but all the materials needed, He had a study that was 95 pages in length. As you can see, he did calculations of all of the different parts based on the information given in the Bible. He even created the costs for each line. And it was a very detailed list of parts. These are the last 2 pages of those itemizations. So I can't imagine how long that took, and obviously that was before computers would have helped us out a lot there. Another item that we have, this is actually at my parents' house right now, but it will be in the archives. We're in process of raising money for that, but we have plans. So this desk was actually made by Henry Madison, and that will be used in the archives. We also have our pulpit at our church, and I've shown several people at it. My dad was on the right. My sister was in the middle, and then my aunt Sarah was on the left. Sarah is related to some here too as well. Rebecca Madison's first cousin. This pulpit was made by Henry Madison, and it was moved to the Belle Plaine Church of God after being originally used at the East Oregon Church. It's obviously a focal point at our church, and it changes with the season and also the theme. We had a Hawaiian theme, so we have a net draping over it. We like to have a little bit of fun. Next, I'll move on to Louis Crombaugh, who lived from 1910 through 1998. We've received materials from Louis Crombaugh donated by his son, Lowell Crombaugh. Louis was a pastor for many years in Iowa and brought into the church by J.W. Williams, and I believe somebody mentioned J.W. Williams earlier as well. I'm not sure who that was. Materials from his library included works and books that had belonged to A.J. Eichner, S.O. Stewart, Charles Hunt, Alta King, Arthur Johnson, Amy Lou Schaefer, and others connected with the Iowa churches. Louis also served as a president of the Iowa State Conference. Other notable donors to our archives include Ivan McGaw, William Wachtel, a few of these are my uncles. William Wachtel is an uncle, Arlen Rankin, Daryl Rankin. We have some items from Francis Burnett and Jim and Jean Rencounter. And then Paul Johnson by way of David Johnson's wife in Rockford. And I have a short clip. I told my mom I wasn't showing this to anyone, but she's not here. She doesn't know. I was thinking about it because it's a video clip. But she and Lowell each told a really short story about J.W. Williams staying at Louis Crombaugh's house. One of the videos opened. Close that. Technology's great and not great at the same time. It's number 24. I can start talking about the next one while we're waiting. The next slide is going to be a photo of my dad. And he was alive years 1949 through 2014. Delbert Rankin, my dad, was an implant to the Midwest, moving to Oregon, Illinois for Bible college from his home state of Washington. He moved to Iowa after training to become a minister and preached in Iowa until his death in the spring of 2014. During this time, he also traveled to speak and work in seminars in the Philippines and in the state of Washington, both at the annual church camp and the Wenatchee History Conference. He taught extensively in Iowa and served as the board also as the president for Iowa State Conference. Let's see if that might be the video that's in there. The archives actually taking a second to load. It's a YouTube link. So there you go. I'm gonna hit the play. Okay, there it goes. If we need to skip the videos, we can do that. All right, they're fixing the sound, so I'm going to go back to, it was my dad's vision, Delbert Rankin, to create an archival addition to our church in Belle Plaine, Iowa, a place where the congregation would be able to study. Since that inception, our church began receiving partial libraries, other books, and manuscripts from various donors, and the vision grew.
Well, the next morning, when Joe Williams opened his suitcase over his neck, and he would walk through the state of Iowa, and he would walk from place to place with a sign hanging over his neck. There was a wooden sign on the front and back that he was an evangelist. And he walked many, many miles. That was his mode of transportation, so he'd be gone for long periods of time. And once in a while, he would go to Louis Knoblauch's house, Louis Morris Knoblauch's house, and they had a place for him where he knew he could go to sleep. And one night he came in with his suitcase and went to bed, and Louis and Loretta didn't really know he was there. Until they came into the house, they were gone late that night, and they came in, and he just said, "Hello, it's just me." And so they knew it was him. Well, the next morning, when Joe Williams opened his suitcase, it was crawling full of worms. Worms were crawling through all of his clothing because he was such an avid hunter or fisherman. He would always take a bunch of worms with him in a sack or something, and somehow they all got out. So the worms were crawling in and out all over. That's the story.
Do we have a little version now?
Yeah,
He also stated that summer, I think, and, Dad had a grain bin to build and put together. He helped Dad put that together and talk black and everything. And I think that, through this, Dad quit smoking. And never smoked any after that.
And probably took the minister.
Hmm?
And probably took the minister, or was he in that?
Well, he wasn't on that, no.
So he was a big influence on her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so don't tell her I showed it. But I just wanted to point out J.W. Williams brought Lewis into the work, and it was a little bit later in his life, and so Lowell is in our church as well. All right, back to.
So he was a big minister.
Can you get it to the next slide?
Well, he wasn't on that, no.
So he was a big influence on her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Big minister.
Yeah.
And probably took the minister.
Should just be able to click on that. Should just be able to click on the background of the slide, and it should go to the next.
Well, he wasn't.
There you go. Okay. So I already told you the background of my dad. He's from Washington State and ended up here to go to OBC. It was his vision to create the archives so the congregation could go there to study, and we did begin to receive partial libraries and some funding after that. We have other books and manuscripts from various donors. And the vision has grown. Fundraising has already begun to support the Midwest Archival Collection, located at our church in Belle Plaine at the Restitution Church of God of the Abrahamic Faith. I have created a 3D of an archive. My background is interior design, so it's kind of up my alley, but this is just a potential of what it could be, and I will explain a few things on this. When the archive area is complete, the number of materials will go up significantly. A lot of pertinent books will be added from my dad's collection, which are still at the house. He has over 12,000 books, so we have to go through those and sort them. To utilize the best space as shown, I showed high-density storage pieces, and it kind of looks like this. They're on a track, and they can hold a great deal of weight and just be moved along that track with a lever or a wheel. And that way you don't have to have all of the walkway around them. You can fit a lot more in a small space. I have a flat file shown for storage at the end of the work table. We do some big projects, so I have a large table shown in there. And we have a lot of bigger pieces that would fit well into a flat file kind of situation. And this layout would be off the main entry to the building. And I have a little video, hopefully it won't jam up, but a little walkthrough in that. So we'll see how that goes. I think you'll have to hit play on that. Again, this is just one version of what it could be, but just to help visualize. And while that's playing, I'll mention, we have a lot of the books at the church and photos and things like that, and we have them in some various rooms. We have a very small library, but this would be bigger and be everything in one room and categorized so you could actually find everything. That's showing that high density storage and filing that I was talking about. some things that he did want included, like a little children's area so they could go in, and I'll be getting to some of the other things in a minute that pertain to kids. And obviously the desk I was talking about earlier that belonged to Henry Madison that he built. We have in our archives the complete set of lessons Delbert produced in his e-ministry, which began according to this excerpt written in the last email sent out by Nancy Rankin. On December 31st, 1999, at our local church New Year's Eve party, Delbert told me that he had made a New Year's resolution, one that he had been thinking about for a while. He had made the decision to start a weekly e-devotion, some of which would be sent out via computer, and some of which would be sent hard copies to mail for the benefit of those without computers. Delbert kept that resolution weekly for all of 14 years, and even had emails completed for each week through the end of April 2014, more than a month after his death. And he was planning a mission trip to the Philippines, so he had it all ready to go. So my mom did send out that last email with a message with that. His love of music meshed with the love of history, and so began a collection of hymnals from every denomination and sect you can imagine. And I'm taking more home with me today, as you found out, and I found out today. I will also be growing that library more this afternoon or evening when Annette Osborne comes. She's going to be bringing probably about 25 to 30 more hymnals. So, and I also got a donation of sheet music. Wherever Michael is, Michael gave me a bag of sheet music today to take, so added to it today. I'm showing a hymnal here from 1945 that was originally from the Hickory Grove Church, later donated to the Stanhope Church, and finally presented to the Belle Plaine Restitution Church of God from Conrad Lindquist of the Stanhope Church. And both of those churches are no longer in existence. Ooh, we have a couple of albums. We have two for sure that I found that were from the college, as shown. One is the Gospelettes, and I didn't bring it, but maybe next time. And that included Rachel Krogh, Janet Turner, and Martha Burnett from OBC, donated from the Lowell Chromebook collection, and we also had a Lee McQuinn album. Lee McQuinn's album jacket included his background in studying at OBC, and you can see the image of the dorm on there. And I didn't realize either, Lee baptized my maternal grandfather, Ray Foster. The Gospelettes worked with director of music at OBC, Louise Lapp, and her daughter Elaine in preparation for recording this album, and this was on the back of the album. If anybody wants to read things more in detail, I'll be posting this online, but Jan, did you have anything to add to this experience?
It was a wonderful experience.
It was a wonderful experience for those that you couldn't hear.
A lot of fun. We went over to Winona Lake and recorded the music at through Rhoda-Heber Studios at one of the large churches at Winona Lake. And Mrs. Lapp and Elaine were there. Elaine added the pizzazz. and she knew all those fancy chords, and so we liked that. It was a lot of fun.
It was fun finding some old, not old, but some archival material that faces I recognize. Yes.
My brother John sat in the front seat between my parents, and every time we moved too much, my mother flicked her leg.
We probably all got flicked a time or two. So So our archive categories, we have some various categories set in place, including various Bibles, many translations, languages and eras, a children's area including flannel graph puppets and children's books, dark religions, to only be used for reference but not available for use by the children, probably under lock and key, that would be best. The 14 years worth of weekly e-devotions produced by Chondra Rankin, geography, historical items, including the desk and pulpit built by Henry Madison, Nellie Lindsay's quilt, Henry Madison's Ark Study, Iowa State Conference chairs. I'll be showing some images of some of these in just a moment. And even some heirloom flowers planted on the church grounds. Hymnals, which range from very old to new in various denominations and languages, Jewish history and religion, including Josephus history, many periodicals, including but not limited to the Progress Journals, Quarterlies, All But One Restitution Heralds, All Iowa Searchlights, which began in 1937, and some of you may be receiving that still today. We actually mail it out today, but it's also now available digitally. Religious and inspirational and self-help. Study materials, including but not limited to concordances, encyclopedias, papers including the Messenger, tracts, various other study books, world history and religion, and much more. We'll look at a few of the examples of some of these in the following slides. This is an example of one Bible I just saw offhand. It's in Ilocano, which is one of the languages from the Philippines. We also have many tracts available for study and evangelism. We have many historical pamphlets available to use. You can see we have stacks and stacks. I just grabbed a few to show. This shows some of the varied topics of books from the Bible commentary, set of books to geography, history, and many books on the Jews in Israel. When chairs were replaced at the Iowa State Conference grounds in Waterloo, there was an option for individuals to purchase the old chairs, and we do have a handful of those. So that's kind of a neat physical thing that we have as well. These chairs were received by the Bellplain Church of God when the Stanhope Church closed their doors. So it's kind of neat to look around and see history and all these different pieces that we have. This lectern was also handmade and also came from Stanhope. We also have a little bit of artwork from Iris Hall Burnett. This is a print of Mary and Jesus, and it's taken from a piece that initially was donated to the Rosehaven Nursing Home where Iris spent her last years. And we also received a chalk talk, so she would just kind of draw